All right, thanks for joining us. Chaos to Clarity. Haven't done one of these in a while, but I don't have a lot of time. I like to keep these under 6 minutes, but I want to talk about this tropical wave that we believe will be a hurricane next week in the Caribbean. Want to get to it. Here's where it is. Pretty good circulation here. Let me go full display here so you can see what I'm talking about. So it's about 10 degrees north, 33 degrees, 34 degrees west. Already a little bit of a swirl here. Now, typically, we don't look for development in this part of the basin. Where we look for development this time of the year is in the Gulf of Mexico, the Northwest Caribbean, and also the Southwest Atlantic. Now, this is during the month of June, okay? Now, we're almost in July, but even if you look at where we look at development in July, it's kind of in the same areas. Northwest Caribbean, right? The Southwest Atlantic, Northwest Caribbean. This area is typically late July, not early July. So what we're seeing right now, we don't typically see during this time of the year. And there's a reason for that, because in the Atlantic basin, in the tropical Atlantic, you typically have this dry, dusty Saharan air here. And you can see that we have quite a bit of Saharan dust. However, where this tropical wave is located, you'll notice there's no dry air coming into the surface of this. This dry air, in fact, is getting pushed away. And there's this little envelope in here where you have moisture, and I also don't see any wind shear. We'll be looking at the wind shear product, but the wind shear is way off to the north in here, along with the dry, dusty air. Now, there is some wind shear in this zone, but basically this has an area to develop here over the next couple of days where we're looking at abundant moisture and no wind shear. So that's what the concern is. Now, whenever we do this, what I always like to do first is I like looking at the history. What do I mean by that? I take a look at where these storms are now and what history tells us. We have a pretty big database. So where this storm is now, where do they typically go? How many storms do we have that form in this basin? So what I did was I took this location at around 10 degrees north and I went about 45 degrees west, because we don't have a tropical system yet, but I think we'll have one in the next day or two. So I want to show you what history shows us as far as where these tracks tend to go. Let me go this camera full, or I should say display full. So here's what we're looking at here. Here's where the location is, and here's all the storms. And this gives you an idea of where they're likely to track, right? Most of them track to the north and east. You see that? There are a couple of storms, though, that went more of the southern track, like we believe this is going to take. The latest one that we've seen was Emily. Let me click that. So Emily occurred from July 11th, so a little later than this one, to July 21st. And this went to a Category 5, and you could see the track south of Jamaica into the Yucatan Peninsula, and then it certainly had impacts in southeast Texas, and it made landfall in the northeast coast of Mexico. So that was one storm that we see. The other one of interest, and let me zoom back out on this. I don't know why it does that. This is the unnamed storm of 1933. That went right into Trinidad and Tobago. This was awfully far south. Then went north and west, and then curled once again into the northeastern coast of Mexico. This, by the way, got to Category 2 status about 109 miles per hour. It wasn't far away from Category 3. So that's what history tells us. There's not a lot of history, because usually we don't see storms forming in this part of the basin this time of the year. All right, let me get into the modeling really quick. And the first thing, what we're going to concentrate on is where we think this system is going to be going. All right, so I have it drawn here. This is Friday evening. This is where let me put this on full so you could see it a little better. So this is where the system is. It's down here. Now, where is it going? It should continue to move east. This is Friday evening because of this big upper high west of Bermuda. What's going to happen, though, as we move forward, you see this trough in here? This is going to be moving eastward. So that's going to force this high to the south and west as we head toward the weekend. Watch as I play this out, and you'll see what I mean. So here we are Friday evening, Saturday evening. and then Sunday evening, and then Monday morning. You see how this high kind of builds east right in here, and then even into Tuesday. You see by Tuesday morning, you have the extension of this high all the way into the central and eastern Atlantic. So what this should do is just continue to force this to the east-southeast. So as a result, the historical tracks that show this system curling to the north, I don't think that's on the table, because I think this high, which builds in the central Atlantic, should keep this on a south or an easterly or westerly flow, I should say, and keep this in the Caribbean. Now, this is good news for the United States, because the farther south this goes, the better bet that it doesn't hit the United States. So that's where we think this is going to go, is into the Caribbean, and then the real question is, as it gets into these areas, Northwest Caribbean, let's say by Thursday or Friday of next week, what does the pattern look like? Well, the pattern looks like you've got this upper high. You see this Friday evening right in here, Thursday evening, right across the southeastern part of the United States. What that will do is that will continue to provide an easterly track or an easterly flow, which should, if this high is there, it should prevent this system from getting into the central or eastern Gulf of Mexico. So those areas look like they're not in play. I would not say that about the Bay of Campeche or the western Gulf of Mexico at this point. So that's the track that we're looking at, an easterly track into the Caribbean, and either a track that takes it into the Gulf of Mexico or perhaps into Central America. That would be Friday, Saturday, and the next week. All right, that's what we're looking at as far as the track. That seems to be correct. Now, let's talk about how this is going to strengthen or not strengthen. Let's go back to this, and I want to go on the Friday evening. I will tell you this, there's no dry air getting into this system, so we're not going to worry about that right now. What I am going to look at is wind shear. So here we go. Here's the storm system right here. I'm going to circle it here. And when we look at the wind shear, and this is Friday evening, what do we see? The strong wind shear is in here, in this belt in here. Your storm is way down here. And there's not much wind shear at all. That's what let me show you another product too that is very helpful. It's the winds at high in the atmosphere. And when you look at that, there's not much wind shear there at all. It's all out of the east. So this system, as it moves east, should continue to strengthen. Let me show it to you Sunday, 8 a.m. in the morning. There's where it is. What's the wind shear look like? Not much. There's 200 millibars. And then see, again, we'll show it. There's where it is. It's right in here. Wind shear, strong winds in the middle upper part of the atmosphere that rip this apart. There's where it is. And look at the wind shear. It's well to the north. It's in here. Well to the north. This system is tucked in here. So that's why we think this should develop into a tropical storm. Certainly by the time Monday morning rolls around. Here's Monday morning, and it's approaching the Grenadines, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, just south of Barbados. This would put Barbados, by the way, in the worst part of the storm. And then it's coming into Trinidad and Tobago, right in here. I'll circle it. It's right here. That's where it is. Again, now what does the wind shear look like? It's relatively light. There's where the storm is. There's the wind shear. It's well up in here. All right, so it's going into an area of warm waters, light wind shear, and I'll show you the water temperatures in a second, and a lot of moisture. This could be a hurricane by Monday morning. Could be. Now, I will tell you this. In the Southwest Atlantic, where this system is now, it's a crapshoot. I've seen these storms defy logic. So I'm very concerned about predicting a hurricane until it gets into the Caribbean, but I do think it'll be a storm. Now, next week, let's continue to move on here. We'll continue to track this. There it is next week. This is Tuesday morning. This is where it should be in the central part of the Caribbean. What does the wind shear look like? I don't see any. Here's the wind shear. It's off to the north. It's all up in here. This system is tucked into an area of light wind shear. Let me show you the winds in the upper part of the atmosphere too, just to be on the safe side. There it is, the wind shear. And there's the 200 millibar high in the atmosphere. And again, I don't see any strong wind shear. The winds are generally light. So this system should really intensify. As we continue to move through the period, there it is Wednesday morning. What does it look like? There it is. It's south of Jamaica and Hispaniola. What does the wind shear look like? Once again, when you call up the wind shear product, here's where it is. It's located in here. Where's the wind shear? Off to the north. Maybe a little wind shear on the northern side of this, maybe. At 200 millibars, what do we look like there? 200 millibars, a little bit of west winds, but it's not a lot. The other concern I have here, we start talking about wind shear, but I do want to show you this really quick as well. I want to show you the water temperatures in this area. Look how warm the water's here. These are the water temperature anomalies. So this whole area, from the Caribbean to where this is now, are not only warm, but they're running well above normal. Water temperatures are in the 80s. They shouldn't be. That's why I think this is going to go. And I think we're going to have some problems with this, certainly in the Caribbean. I think the first impacts are going to be across the lower windward islands here. So in a nutshell, let me show you this graphic here. This is basically the forecast as we move forward here. So you're talking about this tropical wave that will likely become a storm over the next 3 days, probably before it reaches the islands. By the time it gets in toward Trinidad, Tobago, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, we're probably talking about a tropical storm, if not probably a tropical storm. Can't rule out a hurricane. I certainly believe, though, as this moves through the Caribbean next week, this is going to be a hurricane. Big impacts, unfortunately, along the Windward Islands, including St. Vincent, the Grenadines, Trinidad, Tobago, Barbados may be in the worst side of this. There's going to be some problems with this. Then it's going to go into the Caribbean. And then, as I mentioned, I think there's 2 possible locations into the Central America or in the Western Gulf of Mexico. So kind of the key talking points with this is this. This is going to be a storm as it approaches the Windward Islands Sunday night into Monday. It'll get into the Caribbean and it will likely become a hurricane. Could be Cat 2 hurricane. That's maximum staying winds, I believe, up over 96 miles per hour. I think that's a real possibility. I certainly think this will have every opportunity to become the season's first hurricane. Now, where does it go from there? Thursday, Friday, and the Saturday, I think it can go maybe as far north and west as the Bay of Campeche, or I should say as far north as the Bay of Campeche, or the other location would be in the Central America. I don't think this is a Central Gulf Coast or East Coast or East Coast of Gulf Coast of Mexico problems. It could have an impact in South Texas. It could. I don't think we're talking about the upper Texas coast. I don't think so. But we're pretty far away. We're talking well over a week from now as this system comes on through. You got to get the form first. But everything I see says that this tropical wave is going to be, and I think the next name is a beryl, I believe, is the next name. I got to look that up. Let me get into that, what the next name is. But I think there's going to be every possibility that this will likely become at least a tropical storm and in the next couple of days. And I also believe it will become a hurricane in the Caribbean. I want to see what the next name is. I do forget about that every now and then. That's something you would think I would know, right? Tropical storm name. So the next name is beryl. So beryl would be the next name from this system. So here again, there is the track. And as I mentioned, we do believe that this will likely become a hurricane in the Caribbean. And then again, as we get into the latter half of next week, it's either going to be in the Central America or in the Western Gulf of Mexico, not the Central or Eastern Gulf of Mexico. And the only area I think in the U.S. that has to at least pay attention to this, well, everybody should pay attention, but I think the area that it could be susceptible, could be, if that upper high across Florida weakens, would be South Texas. And that's your chaos to clarity. If you have any questions, you can contact me on Twitter, or I should say X, formerly Twitter. I'm at AccuRayno. Have a great day.